Hello and good evening. Welcome. This is Hot Edition. We're live from our news up here at Desawe Kanda. Also live on 3FM 927 on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. You can listen to us as well on Kesmi 107.1 in Tamale and beyond, and on W93.5 in Y and beyond. Also all across the world on 3news.com. Coming up this evening. National Democratic Congress NDC says its flag bearer John Dramani Mahama is yet to be served with the writ of the Supreme Court challenging the constitutionality of his presidential bid for 2024. Stay with me. We'll hear the party shortly as it insists there is no law barring ex-president Mahama from seeking re-election as president. Also, Office of Special Prosecutor declares former Secretary of the Interministerial Mining on illegal mining, that's Charles Bisiu, wanted over corruption and corruption-related activities over his time at the dissolved Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining, tasked to end illegal mining in this country. Stay with me. Charles Bisiu's lawyers are fighting back and saying their client will not turn himself in. This evening, we interrogate the Office of Special Prosecutor's powers. A former Deputy Attorney General, Joseph Benka, will be joining us here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. We get the details of exactly what the powers of the Office of Special Prosecutor is with respect to this public notice of Charles Bisiu as a wanted man. If you go on the Facebook page, the website, and also the Twitter handle of the Office of Special Prosecutor, they have posted that Charles Bisiu, the former secretary to the Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining, is a wanted man. Now, this is what has got a lot of legal reactions going on as we speak, with the lawyers of Charles Bisiu saying that they will in no way, shape or form turn their client in. Stay with me. We're getting to all of that here on Hot Edition, together with the latest in business, sports, and entertainment coming over the next 60 minutes. Let's get into the details. Let's zoom straight into the details of the National Democratic Congress NDC has described as laughable a writ seeking to prevent former President John Dramani Mahama from contesting in an election to become president once more. In a writ filed at the Supreme Court by Editor-in-Chief of the Daily Satellite newspaper, Ken Crunchy, he is seeking interpretation of Article 66 and 68 of the 1992 Constitution regarding the eligibility of the NDC 2024 flag bearer John Mahama to contest for the presidency come next year. In that writ, which we have a copy of, the plaintiff contends that upon a true and proper interpretation of the relevant articles of the Constitution, a person seeking a second presidential term must be a sitting president, and that Mr. John Mahama, having served in that office before and exited, cannot seek re-election. He further avers that Article 68, Clause 2 of the 1992 Constitution bars former presidents from engaging in any activity that provides profit or emolument except with the permission of Parliament. He thus wants the apex court, that's the Supreme Court, to prevent John Mahama from ever contesting in future elections for the purposes of leading the country. Ken Crunchy earlier spoke to my colleague Johnny Hughes on Sunrise on 3FM earlier today, indicating why he is going to test the law on this matter and what he's seeking from the Supreme Court. Take a listen.
Well, the end game is for the Supreme Court to rationalize the position in as far as qualification to become a president in Ghana is concerned, and who is qualified to become president of Ghana, and also to rationalize the process of succession. For instance, because in the 1992 Constitution, even though it says that a president is qualified or a president can ascend to office on 2 occasions. There is no clear bar as to whether for a person who has served before as a president can come again. For instance, I've been listening to people who say that if Mr. Mahama were to succeed in 2024, a real case, constitutional case, can be made for him to assess a second term, and it's an argument that I agree. I think that the time is now for us to rationalize the process. If a person gets into office as a president, what is the term of the president? That's the question we are posing to the Supreme Court, because we believe that it's a 4-year term certain, and then the person who then can assess the second term is a person who is in the presidency, who is the sitting president. Otherwise, you do have people going away for 20 years, having a first term, going away for 20 years, and coming for their second term.
92. I see.
If they become the ex-president, then they fall under the clause you were just reading.
Right.
Article 68(2). So these are declarations that we have put before, relief that we have put before the Supreme Court to interpret and construct and hopefully see from our point of view.
Did you consider the timing of this action before the Supreme Court? Because there have been key arguments that have been raised that, well, you waited too long. The NDC has gone to endorse John Dramani Mahama as his flag bearer for the 2024 elections, and then boom, you come in with this. Did you consider timing as well?
Well, ahead of the 2020 election, I raised this issue. Unfortunately, beyond writing articles and publishing them on Ghana Web and other media handles, I did not take any action. Ahead of this one, I published various articles again. I then proceeded to go to Parliament. I sent a petition to Parliament around early April this year, hoping that they would, the clause that you just read, they would take up the authority that is given to them by the Constitution to vet former presidents. Now we have 2 former presidents, living former presidents, Mr. John Dramani Mahama and Mr. Kufuor, to bring them under the authority, because that is why that clause clearly says. But I was ahead of the 2020 election, I raised this issue. Unfortunately, beyond writing articles and publishing them on Ghana Web and other media handles, I did not take any action. Ahead of this one, I published various articles again. I then proceeded to go to Parliament. I sent a petition to Parliament around early April this year, hoping that they would, the clause that you just read, they would take up the authority that is given to them by the Constitution to vet former presidents. Now we have 2 former presidents, living former presidents, Mr. John Dramani Mahama and Mr. Kufuor, to bring them under the authority, because that is why that clause clearly says. But I was ignored.
Well, so that's Ken Crunchy. He's the one who is at the Supreme Court as we speak, seeking a number of things that the Supreme Court seeks interpretation of Article 68 and 66 of the 1992 Constitution regarding the eligibility of the NDC 2024 flag bearer, that's John Mahama, to contest for the presidency come next year. That's what he is at the Supreme Court seeking right now. He's dwelling on Article 66 and 68 of the 1992 Constitution. So stay with me here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7 for the benefit of some education and information. I'm going to let you into exactly what Article 66 and 68 of the 1992 Constitution really says, and why Ken Crunchy is going to the Supreme Court on the strength of these 2 articles. Now, the writ was filed on June 12th. That was yesterday at the Apex Court, that's the Supreme Court. They cite the Attorney General, former President John Kufuor, former President John Mahama, and the Speaker of Parliament as defendants. That's what I have in front of me, a copy of the writ. But the NDC says that nothing prevents John Mahama from vying for the highest office of the land again. Its Director of Legal Affairs, Abraham Maliba, is going to be joining me on the telephone shortly for a quick reaction on this development. But stay with me here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7, some 13 minutes after 5. Article 66 of the 1992 Constitution This is the detail, and I read, quote, a person elected as president shall, subject to clause 3 of this article, hold office for a term of 4 years, beginning from the date on which he or she is sworn in as president. 2. A person shall not be elected to hold office as president of Ghana for more than 2 terms. 66.3. The office of the president shall become vacant on the expiration of the period specified in clause 1 of this article, or if the incumbent dies or resigns from office or ceases to hold office under Article 69 of the Constitution. 66.4. The president may, by writing signed by him and addressed to the Speaker of Parliament, resign from his office as president. Now, if you look at the writ that Ken Kranche has sought from the Supreme Court, he's seeking specifically emphasis for the interpretation of 68.2, Article 68.2. And take a look at what Article 68.2 talks about. This is it, and I read, quote, the president shall not, on leaving office as president, hold any office of profit or emolument except with the permission of Parliament in any establishment, either directly or indirectly, other than that of the state. The emphasis, other than that of the state. So this last part of Article 68.2 also raises fundamental questions about exactly the weight that you put on interpretation of this article, whether the Constitution, in fact, the Supreme Court is going to put weight on the first part of Article 68.2, which indicates the president shall, and the emphasis is on shall, not, on leaving office as president, hold any office of profit or emolument. Ken Kranche's understanding, which he is seeking the Supreme Court to give interpretation to, is that if John Mahama is going to serve as president, assuming he wins 2024, he will be entitled to emoluments, and with the permission of Parliament in any establishment, either directly or indirectly. And the second part of this 68.2 reads, other than that of the state. So you had some lawyers who also place emphasis on the weight of interpretation of Article 68.2b, which talks about the fact that the president can actually, upon leaving office, hold any office of profit or emolument if it is that of the state. So stay with me. So we're going to get into some analysis on this and whether really there is any legal basis for this path that Ken Kranche has taken, and looking at the details of Article 66 and 68.2. These clauses or the provisions in the Constitution that Ken Kranche is going to the Supreme Court with, and whether it really has any bearing in this analysis at all. Lawyer Eduji Tamaklo is obviously private legal practitioner, member of the NDC legal team. He's joining me on the telephone as well. Lawyer, thank you so much for your time here on Hot Edition. Great to have you. Now, this is what Ken Kranche is going to the Supreme Court to seek interpretation of 66 and 68.2. His basis is that the details of this bars former presidents from engaging in any activity that provide profit or emolument except with the permission of Parliament. He wants the apex court to prevent John Mahama from ever contesting in future elections for the purpose of leading the country. That is why it's at the Supreme Court. Your thoughts?
I think the point ought to be made clear, right, that the original exclusive jurisdiction of the Supreme Court to interpret and enforce the Constitution is not one to enforce idiocy. Alfred, have you heard me?
Lawyer, so it's not one to enforce what? Idiocy?
Idiocy.
What exactly do you mean by this?
Was John Mahama not the candidate in 2016?
He was.
Was he not a candidate in 2020?
Yes, he was.
Is he entitled to 2 terms?
He is, per the provisions I just read.
Has he done 2 terms?
No.
So let's
be on the watch out for idiotic and useless writs. The jurisdiction of the Supreme Court to interpret and enforce the Constitution is a very serious one. In fact, when the Supreme Court interprets and enforces orders emanating from it, even when a president disobeys it, is grounds for the person's removal. That is how serious and grave the consequences of the interpretative and enforcement jurisdiction of powers of the Supreme Court. It is not a jurisdiction to interpret and enforce idiocy. Let me put that on record. It is not a jurisdiction to enforce idiocy.
Your description of this Ken Crunchy suit is what, within the realms of idiocy? That's how you look at it?
Exactly what it is.
Why is that?
Idiocy. No, but you see, Alfred, as I speak to you, do you know the state of Senegal now? There's a decision to put an opposition candidate. Have you seen what is happening in Senegal now?
Yes.
Look, you say we should not entertain things that have the consequence of destabilizing the peace of this country. For me, the peace of this country matters a lot to me. I have very young kids. I can't run to anywhere with them. And so I don't like idiotic jurisprudence.
But
I just ask you, Alfred, listen, I just ask you, the constitutional text, Article 68, 1 and 2, even read as a whole, I ask you a simple question. Is H.E. John Dramani Mahama entitled to 2 terms? He said yes. Has he done the 2 terms? He tried in 2016, it didn't work. Correct. Tried in 2020, it didn't work. Correct. So how is that a bar? How?
Why do you say that's why he's at the Supreme Court seeking this interpretation?
No.
So are you saying that these 2 articles details
the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court to enforce and interpret, like I've told you a while ago, that jurisdiction is a very grave. The consequences when the Supreme Court sits under those 2, the bifurcated jurisdictions of enforcement and interpretation, these are grievous. Orders emanating after the Supreme Court have made declaration or whatsoever. In fact, the Constitution itself says that when a president disobeys, it is ground for his removal. Do you know what it means? Alfred, this is not something we should toy with. This is not something that we should encourage any mad person to joke with. Alfred, let us not encourage these things. Let us not glorify these things. And I say it with every breath that I have.
Well, he's going to have his day in court. He's at the Supreme Court for this matter. Well, they have also given him a hearing, and reason why there's actually a writ already in place. Have you been served as yet? Do you know if John Mahama or the party has been served?
I have read what he had filed on social media.
On social media?
I've read it on social media.
So meaning the party or John Mahama has not been served?
John Mahama is not even in Ghana.
I see. But has the party gotten any information as to whether his assigns or allies have been served at any point?
Does it not require personal service?
That's what the details of the writ says, at least from what I'm seeing.
And I just told you he's not in Ghana. Correct.
There are questions that were raised about the timing of this as well. He says that he petitioned Parliament and he did not get any responses. The reason why he even proceeded to the Supreme Court in the first place. That is Ken Kranchi.
That should tell you how idiotic Parliament is the petition.
You think Parliament understands this petition the way you do?
Very idiotic.
So if John... Yes, you wanted to make a point.
No, I mean, very idiotic. That's the point I was making.
I see. If John Mahama is eventually served, what would be the response? Are you saying that this is an issue that you're not going to spend time in court with?
The last time I checked, the skill set that I have does not include clairvoyance.
We'll wait to see what the coming days will look like on this matter. But that's your position on this, that it doesn't merit the party or John Mahama's attention.
Absolutely. And you see, Ken Kranchi is fond of this. He's such an attention-seeking freak. Look, in 2019, just when JM was about to go for the NDC primaries, he brought this same conversation up. So you see, he's made up his mind to be relevant using the name of John Mahama. He didn't start this thing now.
So in 2019, he did this?
Yes. That's what he does.
I see.
So, this rate that he's issuing, he even published it in his paper during the NDC primaries, to create doubt in the minds of delegates. Right? So that's what he does. What is that?
Thank you very much for your time. And we have some detail now on at least the position that the party's legal team is.
May we find something useful to do next time, my brother. I appreciate this.
Thank you. Edu Jitamaklo is private legal practitioner, is a member of the NDC legal team as well on this. Well, look, they make reference to the history, recalling some precedents to this particular case where they say in 2019, Ken Kranchi brought this particular issue up. And so as a party and legal team to the NDC, and indeed John Mahama's legal team, from the information we're picking, John Mahama is out of the jurisdiction. He's not in Ghana. So because this is a self-service suit, he has not been served as we speak. That is on record. And you just heard that from Edu Jitamaklo as well. That's number one. The second one is that they don't treat this particular suit with the needed seriousness, especially because of the precedents that they make reference to in 2019 when this came up. So we'll see what the Supreme Court's ruling or interpretation of Article 66 and 68(2), these two articles that Ken Kranchi is dwelling on to go to the Supreme Court to seek interpretation on whether John Mahama can contest as flag bearer in 2024 or not on the ticket of the NDC. This is Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7, 27 minutes after 5. Keep your thoughts coming in. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. It's at 3FM 927. We're also live on Kesme 107.1 in Tamale and beyond, and on W93.5 in Wa and beyond as well. But let's go into other issues. And one that has been topical over the last 6 hours, Charles Bissiu is a wanted man. That's according to a release by the Office of Special Prosecutor, who have announced a search for the former secretary to the Interministerial Committee on Legal Mining over corruption and corruption-related matters. According to the OSP, they have taken special interest in the matters in respect of the seizure and management of excavators, machinery, road vehicles, and gold nuggets, and the use of public office for profit. These are the areas that the special prosecutor is focusing on when it comes to investigation of Charles Bissiu. Now, we've had reactions from lawyers as to whether the also special prosecutor has the powers to issue this wanted notice public notice of Charles Bishop being a wanted man. That's number one. And then also whether all avenues have been exhausted before this particular decision was resorted to. We've been trying the telephone lines to get through to Charles Bishop's lawyers. We got information earlier that they had indicated that they were not going to, as it were, give any indication of their client's response to the Office of Special Prosecutors' earlier invitation on the suit to him. So stay with me. We've gotten some information from this lawyer of Charles Bishop. We'll get into the details of it. But this is former Deputy Attorney General Joseph Penka. I spoke to him minutes ago about this development and whether the Office of Special Prosecutor has the mandate to issue this public wanted notice, and then also the circumstances under which this directive can be carried out. Take a listen.
You declare Charles Bishop wanted.
Well, first of all, let me say that the special prosecutor is mandated by the Enabling Act to do three things. The three things are investigate corruption and corruption-related offenses, prosecute corruption and corruption-related offenses cases, and recover assets. So you have investigations, prosecutions, and asset recovery are the three divisions of the Office of the Special Prosecutor. Now, to be able to carry out the mandate of investigations, they have the powers of arrest. So, if you have the powers of arrest, you know what the Constitution says. When you see the person, you tap the person and tell the person you are under arrest, and the reason for the person's arrest in the language the person understands. However, if efforts to get a person arrested becomes impossible, you could go to court and get a warrant, and you can also go to court and seek to get the court to endorse you to make a publication of the person as a wanted person. You know, so when the court issues a warrant and he cannot be arrested, you then can go for publication that the court has issued a warrant for the arrest of Mr. A, and so he's a wanted person, he cannot be found. You know, usually it's a procedural thing. It is within the mandate to publish and arrest suspected criminals, but it must be done in accordance with procedure that is accepted by law, which is that you first have to issue notice to the person. If you see the person physically, you arrest, or you issue and serve notice to the person to appear before you for investigations. If he doesn't, you can go to court for a warrant from the bench, and when the bench warrant is issued and you cannot get the person to arrest, you can make publications with a warrant attached and say that any person with information about that person. But that has to be a last resort. You have to exhaust every remedy that you could get to actually, you could lay hands on to be able to arrest the person. And when it fails, then you rely on that as a last resort to publish the person.
So in this specific case of Charles Bishop, his lawyers had responded, because at the point that he was served, his lawyers indicated that he was not going to respond to the suit because it was not served properly, and so they were not going to respond or even have their client avail himself to the special prosecutor. Would you say that at that point, this next step of declaring him wanted was appropriate? You know, just as you said that all other avenues should have been exhausted before this declaration of Charles Bishop as a wanted man.
First of all, let me again say that I have listened carefully to the lawyers for Charles Bishop, and they stated time without number that they have quite a number of suits pending at the Human Rights Court and at the High Court Accra, respectively, with respect to the same issue. And they are seeking to injunct even the Office of Special Prosecutor from investigating. And remember that they are relying on the constitutional injunction that, look, you have already been, you shouldn't allow a person to suffer double jeopardy because according to them, he has already been been investigated by a credible state institution and cleared on the matter. So re-investigating him on the same matter will amount to double jeopardy and all that. So it's a microcosm of things. And I think that as we speak now, then we have to get a pronouncement also from the court with respect to some of the release they are seeking, interim though it may be, so that they can use that as a way of probably stopping the special prosecutor. Otherwise, the mandate of the special prosecutor is such that he can act in manners that will be in compliance with the act by going to court to seek, as I have indicated, for a warrant for his arrest. And if he is not found, then they can do the publication, which is a last resort. In fact, publication of a wanted person is the last resort. When all available means to track down the person or arrest the person fail. You've been to his house, you cannot find him. You've gone to his office, you cannot find him. All your phone calls to him go unanswered, and etc. So you have to prove that. You have to lay down all the procedures or efforts you made to be able to arrest the person and failed. And you say that then it became a last resort that you had to actually publish the person so that people can feed information leading to the arrest of that person. Otherwise, you know that just publishing the person's pictures and all that can prejudice the minds of people. Remember that in our jurisprudence and in our constitutional architecture, every accused person is innocent until proven guilty or he has pleaded guilty in compliance with Article 19 of our constitution. So clearly, at this particular stage, Charles issue by our constitution is presumed an innocent man. But the publication, if it is not properly handled in compliance with law, could prejudice the fact that he's already guilty or something of the sort.
So, well, that's Joseph Benka, is private legal practitioner and former Deputy Attorney General, also sharing his thoughts on this latest development with Charles Bissio, who has been declared a wanted man, as according to a release by the Office of Special Prosecutor, announced a search for the former secretary to the Interministerial Committee on Illegal Mining over corruption and corruption-related activities. According to the OSP, they have taken special interest in the matters in respect of the seizure and management of excavators, machinery, road vehicles, and gold nuggets, and the use of public office for profit. So that's the development with Charles Bissio, and you just heard the former Deputy Attorney General there with his thoughts. But Ghana has won back its top spot as the largest gold producer in Africa after losing it to South Africa in 2021. But of what significance really is this to residents in mining communities? My colleague Ibrahim Abubakar has been spending some time finding out the level of development in Obuasi, one of the leading gold producing towns in the country, and in fact on the continent, and this is what we found out. Let me take a listen to this.
Obuasi is synonymous with gold, not only because of its long history of mining, but also because of the quantity and quality of gold produced there. Until 2021, Ghana was the leading producer of gold in Africa, and Obuasi mine accounted for over 60% of the total gold production. The precious metal has been mined here for more than a century. But how does it correspond to the development of Obuasi?
As our people are saying, that Obuasi is a mining town. But there are so many developments which are supposed to be going on in Obuasi which we are not seeing. Dilapidated roads, no more building structures, unemployment rates, lack of education system. There are a lot of activities going on in Obuasi which is unbearable. A town which has mining for over 120 years, we don't have a mining museum. There is no tourist site in Obuasi.
Hardship in Obuasi and anodin. Yene kra ye disusu say etetre kom kra no.
The hardship in Obuasi is unbearable. This has security implications.
He say boys ni bebre adane and robbers.
With Ghana returning to gold top spot as output jumps to 3.5 million ounces from previous 2.8 million. Are residents of Obuasi hopeful of any change?
The leaders in Obuasi, they are benefiting from it, but we the indigents, there's nothing to show off. We live here and we barely survive here. When you come to the town of Obuasi, there is nothing here we call development. The youth, they are staying in the houses. They don't have anything to do.
Ghana, a country whose rich gold reserve earned it the nickname the Gold Coast, has many of its mining towns underdeveloped. For residents, reclaiming the top spot of largest producer of gold means nothing to them unless it is linked to the development and economic growth of the area. Ibrahim Abubakar.
That's my colleague Ibrahim Abubakar there, spending some time in the Obuasi community. And in fact, if we go on our Facebook page right now, we're going to be posting some pictures of the Obuasi township and the lack of development in the area. Seth Wolashime is a mining consultant, and he's joined us on the telephone. Mr. Wolashime, thank you so much for joining us on Hot Edition. And this conversation keeps coming up every now and then, that if you look at Johannesburg or Cape Town, for instance, and compare it to Obuasi, there's a clear disconnect, and the other is a far cry of the other one that we're looking at. What exactly leads to this disconnect? Why is Obuasi and other mining towns in this country, in the state in which they are in?
Thank you very much, Alfred, and a good evening to your cherished listeners. This issue is a very thorny one, and like you said, you go to Johannesburg and Cape Town, you see that the impact of the mining activity in those communities are showing clearly. And you see the fact that we have a system where people who are supposed to be in leadership and make decisions and craft policies that will inure to the benefit of these mining communities. It's really unfortunate. They have failed this country. And I don't think it is too late for now. I think we've been mining for a century and a half. And we need to wake up to the realities. The reason why God has given us this natural resource is for us to be able to use it to develop our country. And if we fail in that regard, it means that even if the resource was not given to us by God, I think it would have been better. Look at Obuasi. It is pathetic. And so the last time when the inhabitants had to go and encroach on some of the shafts, and they were resisting to get out of the shaft, I think they have a point, because the kind of money that has been taken out of Obuasi, Alfred, I think that we cannot even begin to fathom it. It will run into trillions of dollars over this period. And what do they have to show for it? Nothing, absolutely nothing. Our technocrats should be ashamed of themselves, and our political leaders for that matter. It is too sad. And when I'm talking about this issue, the passion with which I speak about it, I think that it is about time.
Okay, it is at this point that I ask you that what must give for this kind of expectation that we all have for Obuasi and other mining towns to be fulfilled. So, for instance, you're talking about what they deserve. I mean, we've been there in that community. My colleagues on Onia TV, Onia FM for the most part of last week were there. Potable water is a challenge for some of the people in the community. Access to good roads is a big problem. So, what has to give? What has to happen?
Well, it's all about policy and making sure that mining companies that are granted leases have some responsibility towards these communities that they take their resource from, because that is the wealth of the nation, and that is the wealth of the people by default. So basically, I think that our policymakers must sit up. They must sit up, because it's it's unheard of. It's too bad. Why should we? And people travel. It is not that our technocrats and our politicians don't travel outside. They travel and they see things. They go to Johannesburg. They go and do shopping and do sightseeing and all this. It is the mining activity in the heart of Joburg that has created a community like that. And it is all about policy. I don't know whether leadership also counts here, because, in South Africa, for a long time, it was the white people who were running the system, and therefore they knew what they had to do with the resource that was coming out of there. Unfortunately, we see all these things, but we don't apply. It is not rocket science, and we don't have to reinvent any wheel at all.
Mr. Walashime, thank you so much for your thoughts. Appreciate you, as always.
Thank you, Alfred.
Seth Walashime is mining consultant. Speaker of Parliament Aban Sumanakis for Bagbin has expressed dismay about the activities of gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer, that's LGBTQ people in the country. Mr. Bagbin stressed that he would not partake in any task that seeks to legalize the activities of LGBTQ people in Ghana. That's what he had to say earlier.
I'm a Catholic, I'm pro-life. I will not do anything that will end the world, because God says the world is eternal until he comes back. We cannot do that to end the world. They have the repercussions in their country, and I can tell you that in the next 50 years there will be no indigenous European in the world. In the next 20 years the whole of France will be a Muslim country. Mark it. I may not be alive because they don't produce to replace. The fertility rate in Europe now is 1.3. In fact, the first country to perish is Greece. It's 1.1. I don't want Ghana to be extinct. I want Ghana to continue to survive. And I won't allow anything to stop us from doing that. I told them that this meeting, it will be considered. And inshallah, we want to pass it this meeting. It's coming out in a form that I don't believe that people will have problems with.
No, that's the speaker there. Giving quite clear indications of what's going to be happening in this particular sitting of Parliament. We'll wait to see how things play out. 14 minutes of the hour, 6 o'clock. Nanekia Mensa Brampa is here with business.
Right, Alfred. Good evening to you and the listeners.
All is well?
By God's grace.
I see. Black and white.
I won't get to that. Let me get to business. And we gather, Alfred, that the accounts of all the ministries, departments and agencies and statutory funds are to be moved to a single treasury account. Now, this forms part of Ghana's economic recovery program submitted to the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, and this is to be done by the end of 2023. According to reports, the move is part of efforts to fully implement the Treasury Single Account Program, and this is to merge all accounts of all government institutions into a single account at the central bank for proper management and monitoring. The move is also to reduce or address the issue of domestic borrowing, which leads to a crowding out of the private sector. This plan was contained in Ghana's economic program sent to the IMF as part of expected treasury reforms that government will undertake under the 3-year program. The program is also to ensure the restructuring of Ghana's high debt and push the country back to sustainable levels. And lots of questions happening with this, and what becomes of the banks, the local banks especially, if this move is taking. And we'll be looking at its implications in our subsequent bulletins, Alfred. But
great stuff.
Ratings agency Fitch is also projecting a second round of domestic debt exchange program for Ghana, indicating that the country has a long way to go to restructure its debt for more than 400 billion cedis. Ghana is seeking to get debt relief of about $10.5 billion from its external creditors for the next 4 years. And speaking on key credit stories of African sovereigns and banks, Senior Director in charge of emerging market economies at Fitch, Toby Illes, said talks on the external debt restructuring has prolonged.
So far, the official creditor committee has not met, and so that's quite a big delay. It's not really obvious why there should be such a delay, given that it's just a sort of technical thing. They just have to meet. But, I guess news from the IMF, the noises from the IMF have been quite positive, and Ghana's 2023 budget sort of put forward some fiscal consolidation measures. So the IMF seem to be pushing pretty hard. But still, we haven't had the official creditor committee yet, so there's still quite a long way to go. Maybe the historic track record on the common framework of moving very slowly, maybe that's not a great guide. Maybe Ghana could be a bit different, but there's still quite a lot of work to do, and especially, as I mentioned, given that there might be more happening on the domestic debt front as well.
And that was the Senior Director in charge of emerging market economies at Fitch, Toby Illes, talking about reacting to Fitch's projection. Economists at the University of Ghana Business School, Professor Lord Mensah, justified a possible second round of the domestic debt exchange restructuring. And according to him, the initial debt exchange program did not yield the desired results in terms of improved macroeconomic indicators like inflation.
Debt restructuring has an objective. And the current debt restructuring, the objective is to reduce debt burdens, try to prolong, the time of payment of our debt, and then more so economically reduce the interest rate, structures in the country. You realize that we've had a debt restructuring. Bonds are, hovering around the was proposed. Treasury bills is still above 20%. And that tells you that the yield curve that we have is not economically supportive. Curve that downward, sloping. The short term, yield more than long term.
Well, that was a Zoom interview there, and results of that sound there. But that was Professor Lord Mensah, economist at the University of Ghana Business School, justifying a possible second round of the domestic debt exchange program or restructuring. We'll see how conversations on that will also pan out in our subsequent bulletins. But when you log on to 3news.com, we have more business news updates there. That's it for Business on Hot Edition. We have sports next with Kelvin Owuswansa.
Kelvin.
Yeah, Alfred.
What's happening in sports?
Yeah, there's a lot. The senior national team, the Black Stars of Ghana, are continuing their preparations ahead of that game against Madagascar and the African Nations Cup qualifier. Thomas Partey has joined the team, and they are currently training at the Croswell Stadium. But there is also going to be an interaction with Chris Hughton, the head coach for the team. But unfortunately, Gideon Mensah has been ruled out of that game due to injury. The Auxerre defender picked up that injury in the last game of the season as Bordeaux got relegated from the league. So we'll bring you a bit more on News 360 and also tomorrow morning on Sunrise. But continuing, the Ghana Premier League ended successfully last Sunday. Accra Great Olympics escaping relegation by a whisker. And according to Olympics coach Bismarck Kobe Mensah, it was very difficult, but he doesn't believe that Great Olympics deserved the sort of trouble they went through.
We shouldn't define the achievements of Great Olympics, because Great Olympics is a big club. It's a two-time winners of the league. They have produced some big players. So I think, looking at the stage of the club, this shouldn't define. It's good that we have stayed in, but I think in the near future, we need to look at our things, do things well, and make sure that we compete for the league rather than to focus on surviving in the league. We have had a very difficult season, and seriously, we have struggled a lot, but at the end of the day, every season comes with its responsibilities. this season has been very difficult for us. But at the end, I think that we have survived. That is the major, I think, objective for the club.
So that is it there from Accra Great Olympics coach Besma Kobe Mental. Now, there is a lot more to talk about when it comes to the local scene. But let's move on to Kylian Mbappe. And he says he wants to stay at PSG for now, but he will not extend his contract beyond 2024. The 24-year-old France forward's deal expires after next season with the option of another year. On Tuesday, he tweeted he will continue at PSG, but a letter from his camp said next season would be his last at the club. Now, Mbappe says PSG were first told on the 15th of July 2022 of his decision to reject the extension. Now, French journalist Patrick Gillard spoke to us explaining how this could affect the French giant.
This would necessarily affect the PSG mercato for the next season because I think the club would not base his sports policy on one player, Kylian Mbappe, but would try to find a new star to be the new leader of the PSG, because you know that PSG is a players' club, not a club that is built upon a coach or a manager, but a club built upon some star players like Mbappe, Messi and Neymar. So if they lose Mbappe, they will necessarily change their policy. This could also affect some purchases because they wanted to buy players to please Mbappe. If they know he will leave, they might not. For instance, they might not buy Marcus Thuram if they know Mbappe leaves next year.
So that is it there from Get Football's Patrick Gillard. There will be a lot more as we bring you bits and pieces of that. But Brazil will play against Spain in a friendly in March next year as part of an anti-racism campaign in support of Vinicius Jr. The game will be played at the Bernabeu, home of Brazil winger Vinicius' club side Real Madrid. Vinicius was the target of racist abuse multiple times in Spain while playing for Real in the past campaign. There is no place for racist insults in our football, says Spanish Football Association President Luis Rubiales. That will be all for sports this evening, but Akofa brings us entertainment.
Thank you very much, Kelvin. On entertainment news today, after reviewing all the footage in the attempt to break the current record for longest cooking marathon by an individual, Guinness World Record has officially announced Nigerian chef Hilda Ifeanyi as the new record holder. Although Hilda attempted to set a record of 100 hours, almost 7 hours were deducted from her final total because she mistakenly took extra minutes for one of her rest breaks earlier in the attempt. GWR reports. Now, this leaves the 26-year-old with 93 hours 11 minutes, surpassing the previous record of 87 hours 45 minutes by Lata Tandon in 2019.
Here at GWR HQ, we have recently been reviewing the evidence submitted by Chef Hilda Bassi for her attempt at the longest cooking marathon by an individual. The current record stands at 87 hours and 45 minutes and was achieved by Lata Tandon in India in 2019. This is a challenging record with strict rules that must be followed throughout. In this case, there was a miscalculation when it came to Hilda's rest breaks, meaning we are unable to award the 100 hours claimed. I can now announce that with a time of 93 hours and 11 minutes, Hilda Bassi is the new holder for the Guinness World Records title for longest cooking marathon. Congratulations, you are officially amazing.
Now, away from that, the Perfect March Extra house was filled with excitement as Josephine Otabo, popularly known as Fina, and the winner of Big Brother Naija Season 7, paid a visit to the housemates, sharing her personal life experience. Fina advised housemates not to hold grudges with each other, adding that whatever happens in the house stays in the house.
Definitely, we made up even in the house, and coming outside we made up. Like, that's how it's supposed to be. Even if you fall out with a fellow housemate, when you come outside, make sure to make peace, because nothing in this life shall you get. Yeah, so you don't need to hold grudges. It's a game. You're playing your game. When you're done outside, you're free. be cool with everybody. Everything, all quarrels, all fights that started in the house should end in the house. There's no need taking it outside, because you don't know if that person you're keeping malice with will be somebody that will bring you connection, deals, something you get. So.
And finally, before I go, the Recording Academy, organizers of Grammy Awards, has created a category for Best African Music Performance. In a statement via its Instagram page, the award organizers said the newly added category will feature 19 music genres across Africa, which is open to both contemporary and traditional music from the African continent, including Afro beats, Afro pop, Amapiano, highlife, Ghanaian drill, Fuji, etc. Now, this makes it the first time in the history of the awards that a category will be specifically dedicated to African music. Now, part of the statement also reads, our goal at the Recording Academy is to recognize and honor the very best in music from across the globe. Every year we strive to accurately represent and celebrate the various cultures, influences and genres that shape our world and provide the soundtrack to our lives. Today, we're proud to announce a new category for the 66th Grammy Awards, Best African Music Performance, and that will be all the entertainment news here on Hot Edition, powered by 3 Entertainment. My name is Akofa. Thank you for your company. Alfred?
Best African Music Performance.
Yes, they actually added 3 more categories, but Ghana, we're talking about this the more because in here has the high life and then the Ghanaian drill. And so if we ever have any chances of winning a Grammy, the Grammy conversation has been going on for a while. A lot of Ghanaians believe that this probably will be our moment, and so yeah.
All right.
Yes.
So, like we're sending who? Camido?
We also might be looking at
people?
sending Stonebwoy as well. He has a deal with Def Jam Recordings, and they are, they're like a big plug when it comes to music distribution and all of that. So they've got the muscles. Basically, we're pushing for do a good job. Also make sure that you've got the great link, so that while you're doing the job, they're also making sure that you're pushing your music out there for the recognition and everything else in between.
I see. Or probably Shatawale or those people.
Well, we're yet to see.
Okay, great. Thank you. She's back at 8 o'clock with Wind Down. So, but news just coming through. Former Secretary of the Defunct Interministerial Committee on Legal Mining, Charles Bishu, is saying it is unfortunate that the Office of Special Prosecutor has published his photo as a wanted man, as though he's a fugitive. He explained that he's in the country and not on the run. So he's been speaking. I'll take a listen to this.
Wanted. Me aware, Papa.
I don't turn yourself in. Why?
Okay, that's mine. Make sure it is. Now.
You can find more of that on 3news.com, and we apologize for the poor quality of the audio, but essentially he's saying that he's within the country, and this comes days after the special prosecutor secured an order from the court to arrest him. That's Charles Bishu. This order was secured after Mr. Bishu failed to honor an invitation by the special prosecutor last month. So we're watching quite closely how things are playing out. But thank you so much for staying with us here on Hot Edition on 3FM 92.7. As always, on behalf of the rest of the team, we appreciate your company. Join me at 10 p.m. on TV3 for Ghana Tonight. The drive continues with Giovanni Ejesapon and DJ Faculty. I am Alfred Ocansey. Have a good evening.